Welcome back to the 8th concession. My name is Natalie. Well, time is marching on. That garden still isn't in, so today is the day to finally get my vegetables in the garden. They've been hardening off here on the back step. They're not looking great. The tomatoes are too leggy. The pots are disintegrating. I need to get these plants in the ground. I needed to pull these two lettuces that actually overwintered. These are my winter hardy butter crunch lettuce, but we're going to have a nice fresh salad tonight with dinner, and I needed them out of this bed because this is where the peppers are going to go. But before I start planting, how about we do a mini tour of the garden for the spring crops that I've already planted to see how they're doing. Here's the bed with the cabbages and onions and leeks that I planted early in the season. Now some of the cabbages are doing fantastic, but I noticed this one here and this one here, the cabbage seems to have died. So I don't know what happened there, whether they're being eaten from below or... But the other cabbages look great. Now here in the corner is dianthus that I planted last year, and for some reason they're perennial here and it came back. Isn't that pretty? So the leeks are along here and they're looking great, and then back here are all the onions and they are also doing fine. Here along the front corner you can see that the dill has self-seeded all over the place here. So I'm going to have to thin that out a bit, but you can see I've got plenty of dill. Oh, there's actually dill in among the cabbages too. So I don't actually have to plant any this year, which is fine. And I can see that the parsley has self-seeded too, so I don't have to plant parsley either. I love lazy gardening. Here in bed 3 is the garlic I planted last fall. Gee, those chickens are loud. And that's garlic that I bought 2 years ago in the store, organic, local garlic, and I just planted them instead of buying seed garlic. They did super well, had huge cloves, and this year I just saved some of those. Oh my goodness, lady. And this year I just saved one of the cloves, or two perhaps, and planted them. So they've now pretty much become naturalized. And in front of the garlic there, whoops, right there is a single row of onions as well, because I ran out of room in the first bed. I also planted a few lettuce seeds here, and I see they've sprouted. So seeing as I've got the other lettuce for dinner tonight, these will be ready, I'd say, in a few days. And over here in bed number 4, you can see I've been adding some fresh compost at the front here. But these are the peas and the spinach that I planted. There are the peas on my homemade trellises, and they've attached and they're climbing quite happily. You can see they've got a good stranglehold there. And the spinach is looking lovely. I'm actually going to pick the spinach shortly. I like baby spinach for my Italian wedding soup. So I will actually be picking that soon. Here's the other trellis. And these peas are already almost up to the second ring. So let's get planting. Well, these are not the prettiest tomato plants I've ever grown. You can see they're quite spindly and they're kind of a grayish green color. Now they are called silver fir tomatoes. So maybe that's their natural color. I'm used to seeing, you know, that vibrant green from tomatoes, but maybe that's just how these grow. So getting long spindly tomato plants is not the end of the world because tomatoes, unlike many plants, will actually grow roots from any stem that's underground. So I'm gonna plant them fairly deep and we'll see how they grow. This is the first year I'm trying silver fir. They originate in Eastern Europe somewhere. They're supposed to be fairly hardy, which is important here in Zone 5. The other thing is they're supposed to be naturally blight resistant. And anyone who's been watching my channel knows that I deal with a lot of blight because we have a very high water table here. And when we have summers like we did last year, that was a really bad blight year. So I'm hoping that these will be really healthy with the blight. I'm also going to plant some of the Matt's wild cherry tomato. Again, those of you who were watching last year saw that I tried that plant for the first time. It's an indeterminate tomato plant. That means it'll keep growing through the whole season and setting fruit. It doesn't set them all and then it's done like a determinate tomato. But it grew so wild was an accurate name for it. It was just, I didn't like its spreading habit. However, when all the other tomato plants around it were absolutely massacred with blight, the Matt's wild cherry tomato was unaffected completely. And so even though I didn't like the way they looked, I couldn't overlook the fact that it seemed to be a perfect cherry tomato for this wet area. So what I've decided to do this year though is I'm gonna just let it go wild. I'm actually gonna plant it right here by the trellis and I'm gonna let it trellis up and over. This trellis has my loofahs and one birdhouse gourd. I hope they'll leave enough room for the cherry tomatoes, but I'm gonna plant them at the back here on each side. The other thing I'm going to do is I've also grown some Tidy Treat, which is a nice compact cherry tomato, and I've also grown some what should be Mountain Magic, which is sort of a cocktail sized tomato. You'll notice that I'm gonna plant a couple of tomato plants right by the lettuce that is just sprouting here, and that's because the lettuce for this summer I'm actually going to move. I'm gonna let these grow and harvest them, but I want to put my actual lettuce where the spinach is right now by the sweet peas, because it's on the opposite side of this trellis, and once the plants grow it'll provide nice shade, and I just find that helps keep my lettuce from bolting too quickly in the hot summer. So I'm gonna leave the peas there, however, but I'm gonna plant the lettuce where the spinach is, and the spinach will be coming out shortly and ending up in a nice pot of Italian wedding soup. So right now I'm gonna plant the silver fir in the main part of the bed. I think I'm gonna plant the Tidy Treat around where the lettuce is now, and by the time those tomatoes grow up, that lettuce will be done. And in this other bed behind the peas and spinach is where I'm going to plant my Cup of Moldova plum tomatoes, which I use for sauce, and probably a couple of the Mountain Magic cocktail size. I'll probably put them at the front. I might switch. I might put the Tidy Treat by the peas and the Mountain Magic by the lettuce. I don't know yet. And then at the very back of the Cup of Moldova bed, because that bed is longer, I'm going to put 2 of my zucchini plants. The rest are going to go in that new bed way over there, but that bed's not prepared yet. That's the last one I have to do. So I'm just going to plant a couple of them here. Somehow I have quite a few zucchini plants. I'll put 2 of them there. So that's what I'm hoping to get done this morning, and then I'm going to have to continue planting in a day or so. camera wasn't on, you can see I planted the cup of Moldova. And I put them in fairly deep because they were very leggy. And as every year, I'm going to plant flowers in the corners. This is a zinnia that I grew myself. It always looks so nice, a bit of color in the garden. And then I'm going to put some marigolds on the other corners, and I didn't get too many marigolds coming up, so I also bought some from the store, which I will put on the remaining corners. Well, this video was supposed to end with me showing you how everything got planted in my garden. But that's not how life works always. So I've run into a couple of problems, I've run into a couple of delays, and the whole garden is not in. But if I don't get this video up now, it'll be like a week late because I'm having an issue. Let me show you what I'm dealing with. No, this is not storm damage or some other natural disaster. It is a natural disaster, but it was not weather related. And this did not fall apart. I have taken this apart. I think you can see down at the end the problem. The blocks have shifted and moved. There are gaps. The wall is leaning. This wall isn't quite as bad, but it's somewhat crooked down at the end there. And when I dug it up, this is what I found. Vole and mole tunnels under the whole thing. Even though I lined this new bed with hardware cloth, that was not cheap. You can sort of see the edge of it here. They're just going underneath it. They're basically laughing at my attempts to keep them out of my garden and just having a heyday down here. So instead of putting in my beans and probably some pumpkins and maybe some squash in this bed, I am rebuilding it. And it's taking longer than I would like because the blocks are heavy and it's hard to move and fill in all the holes and try and think of a way to stop this from happening year after year. I made a few small repairs in the other older beds, but nothing like this. The other thing is I need to build 2 more oyas this year for my peppers, so my peppers aren't in yet, but I just haven't had time. I have other commitments, family and jobs and such, so it's frustrating for me because the weather is beautiful. I'd love my plants to be in the ground and just be watching them, but I'm going to have to be a little more patient. I'm going to finish this bed. I'm going to make the other 2 oyas. And in a way, it's probably not a terrible thing that the peppers aren't in yet. All of a sudden, our temperatures are dipping again. I don't know why. It is the end of May, and around here, even though our frost date is about May 10th or 11th, most people consider the long weekend in May, which we call Victoria Day weekend. I think in the United States, it might be Memorial Day. That is what everyone considers planting weekend, just to be safe, and it's just easy. It's a long weekend and most people put their gardens in then. But that's come and gone. But the temperatures are going down to single digits Celsius overnight. 6 degrees I saw on the forecast, 9 degrees. Not great for peppers, which are heat loving. So they're still on trays on my back step. They've hardened off. They could go in. But I think what I might do instead is keep them in the trays, work on the 2 oyas, and then bring them out hopefully when the overnight temperatures stabilize a little more. Maybe it's going to all work out the way it's supposed to. That's what I'm going with. Anyway, I hope your gardening adventure this summer is going a little more smoothly than mine is. But thanks for joining me. Bye for now.